Everybody coming back after lunch. A lot of times during the lunch break has an exit rate that's pretty high. So having everybody come back is most appreciated. So again, I'm Dixon Wright. I'm with Wells Fargo Insurance. And what brings me to this table is that I'm a consumer of the information that I am trying to get the solar industry to provide me. At the end of the day, I write financial guarantees, and I'll write my financial guarantee to a utility like PG&E. I will write it on behalf of a solar developer. And what I'm trying to develop is the ability to quantify what it is that PG&E is looking for in the contract and what my obligations are as a financial provider. And what the data standards element will allow us to do as an industry is to come together on the common definitions. So when we talked about this morning, the reoccurring theme was we had to find those data elements in which we as stakeholders all commonly use on a regular basis, and particularly that the data definitions was apples to apples, so that when we tried to exchange information that we knew for sure that the definition between each other's systems actually mapped up. So, and we worked with XBRL on that regard. XBRL's done a fantastic job for all the companies that have to be publicly traded and have to file to the SEC. Well, we recognized a number of years back that the 2,000 utilities are publicly traded. A number of solar companies are publicly traded. Construction companies are publicly traded. So instead of us trying to find a new standard, instead what we're trying to do is understand the standards that exist and try to exploit them and leverage them. So the problem we all have is when we look at what the big picture is. The challenge we all have is not understanding what the problem is. We all know what the problem is. The problem is everybody has got multiple systems that are fragmented across multiple industries, and the ability for anybody to exchange information means first we have to get a consensus. This is not a technology problem. This is a consensus issue. And so what the Orange Button platform is trying to do is get us to get to a consensus as an industry for what we need to do for data and data sharing and data exchange. So what my argument has been is to leverage a couple of key things. One, the government has been pushing for open standards, and the government has been mandating things under the Open Data Initiative, the Data Act, that is requiring entities to adopt data standards and data governance to make things more consistent. So if we simply took that and said, well, if we could apply it to solar, how would we? And the challenge, again, is not technology, it's consensus. So what I sort of grabbed onto was that the XBRL taxonomy had a whole bunch of data tags that are consistently used in the solar industry for construction, for financing, and we can tap a whole bunch of that and do something right away to get something tangible and to get something that people actually feel something's happening. Because the other big challenge we have is anybody who's been in the standards business is, and they said it yesterday, having a standard is no good unless somebody adopts it and uses it. And the problem with the standard is it's a chicken or the egg. So when I talk about my solar developers having data about how a system is performing, what good is it if I don't have a surety company or a bank that's importing it to make use of it? So he's not going to send me information unless there's somebody going to receive it, and the bank's not going to receive it unless somebody's sending it. So what I thought was a unique way, and what I'd like to have our group do, is to try to find some way to get outreach, engagement, to get people in on doing something that's real tangible. Because if we can show some actual producible results, in other words, we have the IEC 674 data standard on solar performance that's currently right now being discussed. What data fields go into it? What are the data definitions? Well, if I sent you an address file, you don't care whether I sent it out of Lotus or Outlook. You just know it fits your Outlook. Well, the 6174 data set came to me and I had no place to put it into, then it's no good to me. It's pretty hard to adopt something. So what Wells Fargo's offered to do is contribute toward the financing of supporting XBRL and getting the taxonomy for 61724. But the only problem is we cannot start the XBRL process until we've actually worked out what are the data fields in IE 61724. So what our offer has been is to start off by having a contest. Contests are great if you focus on what their objective is. The objective of the contest we're offering to support with $25,000 is to have people build an application that could read the IE 61724 data set. And what's most important about it is it's only 60 days. So we're not looking for somebody to come and really create something, but rather, you know, the kids in today's universities, they've been grown up in computers, they're very familiar with the technology. What we're going to do is give them a use case. The use case is, how is the solar system performing? Because if I'm a financial provider providing guarantees on how a solar system is performing, knowing how it's performing would help. Okay, if I'm drafting insurance policies for what could do, that information could be critical. But how can any surety company work with it? How can any insurance company work with it until it's real? And how do you make it real until people are willing to invest in it? How do you get it invested until you can validate its cost and benefit? I mean, you know, the PG&E is no different than Wells Fargo. We cannot develop systems on a con. If it's free, hey, we might be able to do that. So the thought was, why don't we invite some universities, and we have Arizona is interested already. Joe was talking about Cornell. Arizona has Manny, if you're familiar with Manny. He's been doing a lot of work on data analytics and performance measurement metrics. My alumni, Chico, has got a huge MIS department, works with a lot of the Bay Area people. They are very interested in developing this prototype app. We've asked to partner with, you know, with the Salesforces and the Amazon Web Services, so that what they produce, if they're cloud-based, because everything's going to the cloud to a certain extent, was then available on the Salesforce App Exchange, or the Amazon Exchange, or the QuickBase, which is Intuit's former company. A lot of companies are using QuickBooks in the solar installation. Well, what that would mean is that I can go to my insurance company and say, you can download this app for free, and you can receive this information on 61724. That's a cost factor most of them will absorb. Okay, and so now it comes down to, what do I want in the information? And so while the 61724 group, and you're going to hear from them a little later, is defining what fields are in their data set, we expect we might actually get some feedback from the insurance companies in the surety market saying, I want this, or I want that. Or what the utilities want. What do they want? And as I was mentioning, John and I from PG&E had a little bit of a talk earlier. If I'm going to put out a financial product that guarantees to respond to a certain situation, we want to know what that situation is quantified. So if I have a PPA that I'm guaranteeing the delivery to PG&E on, and John is using this standard over here, I'm using the standard over here, and my developer is using this standard over here, if something goes wrong, none of us can really agree on what the issue is. And that creates uncertainty, unpredictability, and unreliability. However, if the IEC 61724 is accepted and adopted by PG&E, by my surety company, and by my developer, and the PPA says I'll deliver 1,000 watts, and the IEC report came out, it was 980, then there is no discrepancy, there is no question about what the product that I provide does. It provides PG&E reliability, it provides me reliability because I understand what I have to do. It provides my developer a clear benchmark of what his obligations are, and he didn't make them. So having clear, defined action plan. If we took the 61724 and we ended up with 5, 6, 20 submissions, all of us in the process of getting those students to submit something would be engaging, would be learning about what everybody wanted, and we would actually have something to do. Because as we talk around the table, all of us had some great conversations today, but at the end of the day, what is going to happen? What are we going to do that actually moves the ball forward? This actually can give us something to focus. All right, if we all focused on what do we want out of 61724, and at the end of the day, how do we get that into XBRL so we can truly rely on it? Now, not all of 61724 is financial reporting, so not all of it will be part of XBRL. But the process of engagement and working together should help us define what belongs in XBRL, what can be used by insurance banks, construction, and all the rest, and what is more nuanced as an extension or other things like that. So our contest is being thrown out there as an idea, as a way for the orange button to have something that produces some intel, produces some engagement, produces some education and outreach. And so on July 20th, we are going to put out an invitation for anybody who wants to submit. I have 25 different benchmarks. You know, how well did you connect with beads? How well did you connect with XBRL? How well did you connect with the construction industry? So that if you went for all 25, of course, that's a home run. But what we're really trying to do is define what is it we're trying to know about, to create some intel so that the Orange Button group can take what we've learned and actually go back to the software community and say, these are the fields we've identified we need. This is an example of what an output would look like. And I would imagine some of these kids could put together amazing graphics and imagery about that 61724. And of course, it'll be dummy data at the beginning and whatnot, but it gives us something to focus on. And when we talk about a use case, I don't think there's any more use case more critical than how a solar system is performing. And so if we focused on that, I think you'd find a lot of the common data fields that we were talking about earlier that crosses multiple places. Now the other thing is, and Michelle did a fantastic job with XBRL and my surety community in doing the whole process for a work-on-hand report. What a work-on-hand report is: a contractor's report to the surety and the financial community. Here are my contracts, and here are how they are performing. It's a performance measurement data set. Well, the IEC is a performance measurement data set. You know, different numbers, but at the end of the day, in the solar world, the interaction is a solar installer actually is identified in the IE 6724 data set. So if a solar installer wanted to put a solar facility together on a public building or a public project, they would need a surety bond. Well, wouldn't it be great if the application for that solar installation came in using the same data fields that XBRL's already identified? My insurance companies could write a bond for the solar installer. If we looked at a target market and who we would like to help and support, I think we all agree that our veterans are a key element to which our nation has dedicated itself to. When you look at who's funding the Orange Button, the Sunshine Initiative, they also fund another program called Solar Ready Vets, training veterans who have been in the military service, and particularly those that have been involved in solar, how to transition to civilian. Wells Fargo, I'm very proud to say, supports a group called Grid Alternatives here in the East Bay with a $750,000 grant to train veterans into the solar business. Well, it'd be very easy for us to add to that and say, if you start a solar installation company, we could make getting a surety bond, which is a prerequisite for being on public works, we could make it really easy on the data set that we're actually talking about in this room. So instead of something that's sort of out there and some down the road we'll get something done, I can tell you within 30 days I can write a contractor for a solar installation using this data standard that we do in this room today. And I can tell you by November, when we have the contest complete at the SGIP National Convention in DC, whatever those applications that were submitted, they will add value because there will be something tactical, something people can see, touch, and all my insurance companies can then know that they can immediately get into the data retrieval system without having to ask their IT department for permission.
Dixon,